I bet you didn't know that the police oral board can set up your entire hiring process for success. Let's discuss. Before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One is the Getting Started workshop. There's a bunch of hidden bonuses in there as well, so I guess there's more gifts, but it will walk you through every phase of the hiring process. My gift to you, enjoy. Additionally, we have coaching calls with any member of my team or myself if you'd like. Jump in, we'll go over your entire hiring process, what you have to look forward to, and what potential hurdles might come up in your path. Now, the police oral board. A lot of people sometimes think that this is just a cakewalk. They go in, they interview, it's just like any other interview, it's no big deal. It's a formality. Completely wrong. Completely wrong. Matter of fact, your oral board can set the tone for the rest of your hiring process. If you score mediocre, right, say there's an eligibility list or say it's just a ranking structure, and you score mediocre and you move to, say, the middle or the bottom of the path, your background investigator, your hiring official, HR, is not going to put as much stock into you as a candidate as they would individuals at the top of the list. Now, everyone thinks, hey, I did really well in the written exam. I did really well on the PT test. I'm ranked number one. Well, guess what? Every time you do something, your ranking changes. You can either stay number one or you can fall, right? So your board interview is no longer necessarily about your mental acuity or your physical prowess. Now it's about how well you can articulate yourself and explain experiences you've had. And sometimes you go straight from a board interview straight to a chief's interview if you pass. By the way, we call that a success indicator. If you do move on or they ask you to do something after the board interview, write that little tip down. If they say, hey, let's get fingerprints, let's schedule you for the next thing, that's usually a success indicator, saying that you passed the board interview. Where you passed, hard to say. But let's say you go in, right, you're a top candidate, or maybe they don't even rank you, but they know you're a top candidate, and you go in and you choke on the board, but they say, oh, hey, he did really well or she did really well during the written and physical exam. That combined with this mediocre board interview, yeah, we'll move them forward. Well, understand that while the first time you really get to see a lot of these departments or really get to put your best foot forward is during this panel board interview. And the panel board interview is usually multiple officers, usually high-ranking officials down to, lead officers or maybe the head of the department could be there. Unlikely, but usually some high-ranking official, some middle management supervisor such as a sergeant or something like that, and maybe someone who's the head of the FTO program like a lead police officer, something along those lines. And you're going to go in, and it's going to be a panel between 2 to 5. Typically, I see around 3, but 2 to 5 individuals. There may be people sitting in the back that you don't know that don't speak. Maybe someone from HR or legal to make sure that everything is held in congruent amongst all candidates, right? That it's fair and unbiased through all candidates. And then you're going to go in, and your answers are going to dictate how they see you. And this might be the first real substantial time you get in front of them, in front of the people who really make decisions. And what do I mean by this? So let's say you have the head of training, the captain head of training that's doing the interviews. This is going to be the one really pushing, candidates forward and going to the chief or to the sheriff and saying, hey, sir, ma'am, I think this is our candidate. We want to get this guy or gal before any other department does, right? We really want to push this person. Okay, hey, pass that name down to HR. Tell HR we want to move quick on this one. Get our top background investigator on this. Let's move this guy's or this gal's hiring process along as quick as possible to really kind of pull them off the street before another department gets them, especially in today's day and age where it's a fight for, it's literally a fight for good officers that you're trying to get, especially new incoming officers, right? So you're going to go through, and maybe you got a little bit of notoriety. Now, the first time you really get to see them is during, or see anyone from the department, is usually during the PT test, sometimes during the written exam, but usually during the PT test is really where you get to stand out and make yourself individualized, right? You get to stand out as your own person. A lot of times you'll turn in a test and they won't be able to put a name to the face, how well you score. They'll be looking for you, but they won't really know who they're looking for. They're just looking for a name. The PT test, they actually get to put a face to the name, right? To the scores. Oh, hey, this guy or gal crushed the 1.5 miles, just did absolutely well, or made that obstacle course look super easy, got one of the best times we've ever seen. Great. Okay, now they can recommend you a little bit to the board. Now that could be a good thing and a bad thing. The board might have higher expectations. I've seen this. I've ran into this myself. They say, hey, we got a really strong candidate coming in, Frank. He's coming in for the oral board. He's up next. And I'm like, great. Okay, cool. Fill some billets. This might be one of our guys. Let's do it, right? We got a really strong candidate coming in. Okay, great. Let's fill this billet. This might be one of the gals to fill this slot that we just lost. So, that way we can make sure that, we have even shift ratios. This is fantastic. And they come in and it's lackluster. It's just that there's nothing there. There's no substance, right? I don't know who this individual is. I'm expecting great things from them because I've heard nothing but great things from their written exam and their PT scores, and I'm like, you're fantastic. Now, I'm not telling you to be mediocre. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying is don't drop the ball. If you're going to excel in other aspects of your life, excel in every aspect of your life. I'm not telling you to go out there and be egotistical and try to be the best and step on people. That's not what I'm saying. But you're always competing against yourself. Is this the best interview I've ever done? Is this the best PT test I've ever done? Is this the best written exam I've ever done? You're always trying to compete. Is this the best I knew I could do at that time? Maybe you had an injury, maybe you had a cold. That's fine. But you're going into this board interview, and I expect so much from someone who crushed the other aspects, and then to come in, and I'm just underwhelmed, right? Now, that doesn't happen all the time, but you get what I'm saying. So you come in, and I see them, or I see you come in, and this is the first real time I get to know you, right? So yeah, I got a little bit of information from the fitness instructors who came in and said, hey, Frank's a good guy. He crushed the PT test. Let's move him forward. I come in and I just tank the board interview, right? But because of my scores and because I get moved forward. But now I'm middle or bottom of the pack, right? No one's giving me the time of day. No one's reaching out to me first. And make no mistake, we reach out to our top candidates first, whether they're ranked or not. We have a list. These are the candidates we reach out to first, right? And so we reach out to them, and I'm not getting reached out to, but a buddy that I know that went through the process with me is getting, hey, did you get that email? Did you get that email yet from the department? And maybe my email doesn't come a week later until after they screen out a couple more candidates who were ahead of me, right? Let's say out of three written exams and 3 PT exams, we get 60 candidates to move forward for 20 positions, right? 60 candidates move forward for 20 positions. Okay, so I'm in the top 20 right now, but then I go do my board interview. Me and a buddy go do our board interviews, and next thing you know, I'm no longer in the top 20 because I didn't score high enough on my board, and it knocks me down to maybe number 30 on the list, right? Well, they're going to reach out to that top 20 first. They're going to get that first email. And then out of that top 20, let's say 10 of them have immediate disqualifications or fail to turn in their paperwork on time, right? So 10 of them lose. So now they reach down to that bottom, that next 10, right? And I'm in it. I'm number 30. Now, I don't know where I'm at in it, right? Sometimes they put out lists, but not every department ranks based on a list, right? But we do rank our candidates based on how we want to reach out to them. So they reach out to me, and a week later I'm telling my buddy, oh man, I got the call. I guess they were just, taking, no. What they were doing is they're going through their top list, and then they're slowly reaching out, because the one thing they can't do is send 60 people or, 60 people pass, right? Or 60 people pass their written and physical exam. They can't interview all 60, right? And they can't send all 60 to polygraphs and to psychs. It costs too much money, right? So they're going to pick their top candidates, and then they're going to do it in waves, right? Top tier, second tier, third tier, right? Now, for you, you're just, hey, as long as I get hired, I don't care what tier I'm in. Well, guess what? The tier that you fall in may determine if you get hired, because if you're too low on a tier because you didn't do well on the board interview, then you're at the point where you're saying, hey, this department would have hired me, but I wasn't in that. They're willing to accept everything about me, right? But I wasn't in the top tier enough. They already filled all their billets before they could get to me. It's unfortunate, and you don't want that. That's why you always want to do your best. Once again, you're not competing against anyone else. You're competing against yourself in every aspect, right? Hey, was this the smoothest polygraph I've ever done? Did I go into it 100% prepared because I knew everything? I knew all my hurdles. I knew everything on my background packet because I studied it. I made sure I spent a month prepping my background packet. That's why we give all our coaching members a sample PHS to fill out, and that's more robust than almost any departments out there. It's, even anyone who gets our online course has access to it. But you get what I'm saying, right? It's one of those things that it's just such a necessity, the preparation of it. So you go in, you're doing this board interview, and they're asking you, the typical questions. Oh, tell me about yourself. Why do you want to become a police officer? What do you know about the department, right? These are the typical questions. But then what happens when they get into the harder questions, Hey, tell me about a time that you failed at something, right? Tell me about a time you had a disagreement with a coworker or a supervisor. Oh, you've never had a disagreement with a coworker? Tell me about a disagreement you've ever had with a family member. Anything like that, right? Those are the questions that you might not be 100% prepared for. What if they come up with a scenario situation? Hey, you're responding to a break-in and you get a call for a major motor vehicle accident, a break-in of an abandoned building, and you get a call for a major motor vehicle accident with potential serious injuries or fatalities. Which one do you go to? Right? You're not trained as a law enforcement officer. You might not know. Maybe there's a policy written, but they just want to see how your mind works. That's a lot of scenario questions. Are you prepared for that? Can you articulate it, right? Can you articulate it to a point to where, hey, personally, I think I would do this, but I would also follow whatever training I would do. So, but can you rationalize it? Hey, this is what I'm going to do. It's a tough call. Right? It's a tough call. And if you don't do well during this board interview, that I'm seeing a lot of people say, oh, it's a formality. It's not a formality. There's nothing about it. Even if you pass, you might not be as high ranked as you maybe thought you were or started with. Sometimes I like rank. I really don't like rankings, public rankings, because usually that means it's a hiring pool agency and they have open billets and and you just kind of fall in where you fall in and they'll contact you when they get to you. I really don't like that, but I guess if you look at every department from a certain aspect, every department can kind of be that way, except departments are literally hiring for, we have 25 vacancies, we're hiring for 25 vacancies in the next, 5 to 6 months or 4 to 6 months. I prefer you to apply to a department that's currently hiring, not one that's going to put you on a year or two eligibility list. But you get what I'm saying, right? You understand that when you go into a situation like this, you go into the oral board and you don't do something that's going to properly present yourself. And I'm going to get into that here in a second. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. So what does that look like? Well, let's back up here. It doesn't even have to be the oral board. Anytime you go in for a department, anytime you go in to see a department, you are in professional attire unless they tell you otherwise. So if you're going in for a PT test and they say, hey, come in proper PT equipment or proper PT gear, you got it, right? Got it. Okay. Showing up, proper shorts and a short sleeve t-shirt or whatever you need for weather that day. Got it. Anything else other than that, you are in a full suit and tie for males and a suit for women, right? It is what it is. Just for the love of everything, just dress professionally. More important in the board interview, I can tell you right now, any person that's ever came in and interviewed with any of my departments, ever, if you walked in, and let's pick on males here for a second. If you walked in and you were in a collared shirt and tan slacks and dress shoes, you were not getting hired. You were not. We almost didn't even want to take the interview. Not a single person that's ever dressed that way has ever gotten hired, that I know of in any of my departments, ever, right? At least not while I was there. It's just not going to happen. We expect to see the best of you in the hiring process. There's only downhill from there, right? We expect to see everything about the best of you during the hiring process, which means it doesn't get any better until we train you. So no, if you're already showing up and you're not properly dressed, what makes us think that you're going to properly wear your uniform if you can't show up in professional attire, right? Next is... This is a big one. Don't show up to anything in the department with an illegal vehicle. Expired registration, tin on your windows that are outside legal necessities unless you have, legal medical clearance or anything you need for that. Don't do it. If you have a vehicle that's not properly registered or properly insured for the for the street, don't drive it. Borrow someone's vehicle to go to, and then get your stuff up to date, because it's going to catch up to you in the background process. I promise you that. But yeah, all these little things. I mean, this could be a PT test. This could be the board interview. It could be anything. Don't show up with anything like that. If you smoke, don't have a smoke break right before you go in. Matter of fact, try not to smoke in the professional attire you're wearing, because the last thing you want to do is go in there smelling like smoke, right? And law enforcement, there's no smoke breaks. You don't get to say, oh, hey, I'm, Sarge, I'm out on a smoke break. I can't handle this emergency call right now. That doesn't work, right? So don't go in there, have proper hygiene. We'll put it that way. Have proper hygiene going in. What else? Next is prepare. Learn everything you can about that department. Learn how many square miles it is that department's jurisdiction is, or the city or the town or the county they patrol, or the state, right, if you're applying to a state agency. Learn how many people work in the city or reside in that city or town. We'll try to learn. Definitely know who the chief of police is or the sheriff is, right? Try to know their, direct subordinate, a deputy chief or a deputy sheriff. Try to know how many officers they have. If you can, know how many employees that department has, sworn and unsworn. Sworn would be the law enforcement officers. Unsworn would be support staff, HR, whatever. And then also know their core values. Usually it's 3 statements or 3 words: honor, courage, commitment, something like that. And then know their mission statement. You don't have to have a whole mission statement memorized, but be able to paraphrase it, especially if you're going to meet the head of the department or agency, the chief or the sheriff or the SAC, the senior agent in charge, whatever, if you're applying federal to agent positions. Make sure you can spout that stuff out. Once again, you don't have to have a whole 2-page mission statement memorized, but you need to be able to hit the core points of that, right? It's key. Even if they don't ask you, at least you're prepared for it. And then the biggest tip I give everyone for a board interview: know the experiences you have, and then be able to properly articulate that. So if I ask you, like I did earlier, hey, tell me about a time you struggled. Well, if that question changes up, hey, tell me about a time something wasn't working out, or tell me about a time that you had a difficult situation. That's the same answer. The same answer can be used for that, right? Tell me about a time that you succeeded, right? Tell me about a time that you were happy. Tell me about a time you're proud of yourself. Same answer could be used for that, right? Understand how to articulate. Tell me about a weakness you have, right? That's a big one. Usually you'll see. And here's another version of that. Tell me about something you struggle with. Tell me about something you're trying to improve in. Same thing, a weakness question, right? You get what I'm saying? These are all questions that you should be able to answer based on the experiences you've had, and then you need to learn how to properly articulate those answers so that it comes across and conveys really well. It doesn't have to be a speech, right? Clear and concise. Be specific, don't elaborate. The one time you can expound upon yourself is during the board interview, but not so much that you lose train of the original question. A lot of times, here's what you'll hear with a board interview, right? Whoever's running it will say, hey, we have a couple rules. Let me go over them real quick. First and foremost, I cannot expound upon a question. I can repeat it if you need me to, or we can repeat it if you need us to, but we cannot provide you any additional details. Additionally, please tell us or let us know when you have completed your answer. Do you understand these rules? That's usually how I opened up in a board interview, right? That's pretty standard. A lot of times you'll see when they try to standardize a board interview where they're asking the same questions to different candidates to make it fair across the board, you'll see a lot of times they cannot deviate from the specific question. And they can only grade you based on your answer. And if you ramble and you come back through 5 minutes into the answer and you say, hey, what was the question again? You're going to lose points. It's not going to look good. I've seen that, by the way. Doesn't look good. Work on this. Board interview is not just, it's not just an interview for another job. It's not just an interview, to go. I'm not diminishing any other profession. It's just not a normal interview. Let me say it that way. You need to go in ready for the best explanation of yourself and possible scenarios and situations of your life. And if you're not prepared for that, you're not fully prepared for the board interview. And once again, here's what I mean about the board interview setting you up later on down the line, much like I was saying earlier. If you do really well in the board interview and your other scores were semi-okay, the ranking will just move you up. If you crush the board interview and you did okay in the PT and written exam, the board interview will skyrocket you to the top of the list. It's almost like we reset the ranking right after the board interview. Yes to this guy or gal, no to this guy or gal, maybe to this guy or gal. And that's it. So the board interview can shoot you up there. Now, the other thing that happens is the background investigators will get told this, right? So they'll say, hey, you know, Frank, he's a mediocre candidate. I really want you to focus on John more, right? John's the number one candidate. If he has some hurdles, don't just DQ him. Let's see if we can work through him, bring him back to us. We'll talk. Oh, well, what about Frank? If he has the typical hurdles, just get rid of him. We have more candidates, right? Or not even the typical. If he has any hurdles, you know, we have other candidates. Let's just put him on the back burner right now. Or if it's anything that we don't feel like dealing with, we'll get rid of him. Well, what about John? John, bring anything that he has to us first before we get rid of him. He's a strong candidate. We really loved him during the board interview. Let's do it this way. And then that's the way it's going to go. So you'll have a little bit more chance. And most of the time during the background investigation, the problem that people have is not getting the opportunity to articulate their hurdles, right? So if you do a bad job in the PHS, your personal history statement, right, your background packet, if you do a bad job at articulating that, and then that background investigator says, hey, Frank has this in his background. Do we want to move forward with him? No, I don't. How did he say that? No, I don't have time to deal with that. Even if it's fine, I don't have time to deal with it. Hey, John has this in his background. How do you word that? That was probably poorly worded. Sit him down, talk to him, figure out what's going on there. Come back to me. Let's see if it's something we can get past. That's what a board interview can do for you. All right? Do not sleep on the board interview. Don't do it. It's a surefire way to mess up your hiring process and potentially cost you one of the agencies you really want. All right, I hope this helps. Remember, those 2 gifts are in the description for you. One of them is the Getting Started workshop. There's a bunch of hidden bonuses in there as well. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, including the board interview. So go in there, look at it, learn more, be prepared. Be prepared for your entire hiring process. This is a career, not a job. Next is the coaching call with any member of my team or myself. We'd be glad to sit down, discuss any hurdles with you, or help you prep for the board if you need to. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.